Her fingers curled around the back of a chair. "You're not protecting me. You're caging me." The words landed between them, with the clarity of glass on stone. He didn't rush to deny it. He lifted his chin a fraction, as if bracing for weather. "I'm keeping you safe," he said. "At the cost of my freedom," she replied. "At the clinic today, a father reached for me to show a photo of his daughter. Your man stepped between us. Do you know what that feels like?" He clenched his jaw, then let it loosen by force. "Excess. I'll recalibrate." "This isn't about recalibrating." She kept her voice low. "This is about trust. About whether you can stand not being in control every second I'm out of your sight." He started to speak, stopped, and tried again. "Clara." "No." She shook her head once. "Hear me. I have spent years building a spine strong enough to hold a life that kept breaking. I won't trade that away for a guarded hallway." His hands opened, then closed. Empty. "The threats aren't theoretical. Neither is my agency," she said. Silence pressed against the edges of the room. He took 2 steps forward, then stopped, hands at his sides. "I wake up, and my first thought is, where are you? Are you all right? Did anyone push too hard? Did anyone touch your story without permission?" His voice thickened, low and rough. "I know what it looks like. I know I'm over the line. I also know that when I don't know where you are, I can't breathe. Where's the line between care and control?" Give Sebastian 1 sentence of advice in the comments. If you're still with us, hit the like button. Your support keeps these stories coming. The words arrived raw, stripped of strategy. Clara felt them in her chest before she understood them. "You can't breathe?" He nodded once, jaw working. "It's not a metaphor for me. It's a body thing. I spent a decade training myself to need nobody. It turns out the first person I let inside the perimeter rewired everything." Her anger softened at the edges, not erased, but informed. "Sebastian, that's not love. That's fear wearing love's jacket." "It's both," he admitted, eyes bright with a kind of fury that had nothing to do with rage and everything to do with helplessness. "I'm afraid of losing you. I'm afraid of failing you. I'm afraid of watching you walk into rooms where people see a headline instead of a human. So I show up. I hire guards. I stitch your day to mine. So the world has fewer angles to strike. And in the process, you erase my choice," she said. "You can't build a future with someone by turning them into a project." He closed his eyes, opened them. "Tell me what to do. Trust me," she said. "Trust that I'll say when I need help. Trust that I know how to step away. Trust that I want you near because I choose you, not because you've locked the doors." He looked like a man taking in oxygen after too long underwater. "I can try," he said, honest enough to be terrifying. "I don't know if I'll be good at it yet." "You don't have to be good at it," she said, moving around the chair, closing the distance. "You have to be willing." He reached for her, stopped short, and let his hands fall. "I am." They sat on the edge of the sofa like people negotiating a fragile ceasefire, knees angled toward each other, voices quiet. "Here are my lines," Clara said. "Not as a list to win a fight, but as a map for both of them. No shadowing inside clinics and church halls. One driver is fine. No second car. No shared calendar, unless I choose to add you to a block. If you're worried, ask. Don't deploy." He nodded after each. "Muscle by muscle retraining. Counter terms," he offered. "Keep your phone on vibrate at public events. If you change locations, send a single text that says, 'Safe.' If media corners you, step inside a building and call me or PR. Done," she said. "And if I start to choke on air I can't control, you'll tell me," she said, softer. "Not the board. Not security." "Me?" He swallowed, the motion tight. "Me telling you that won't scare you off." "It will keep me," she said, lifting her hand to his cheek. Honesty has a way of doing that. His eyes closed briefly under her touch. When he opened them, he looked less like a CEO and more like the man who had whispered in candlelight that he would learn. "I'm sorry," he said, "for turning care into a cage, for dressing fear up as strategy. I'm sorry," she returned, "for waiting until I snapped to tell you the weight of it." They sat there, apology held between their palms like something living. He leaned forward, forehead touching hers, breath steadying against her mouth. Her phone rang. They both froze. The screen lit with the hospital's number. Clara answered on the first beat. "This is Clara. Mrs. Knight." "It's Jenna from the ward," came the soft voice she knew. "Eli's oxygen levels dropped this hour. We've increased support and paged the attending. He's conscious but struggling. The doctor would like to talk to you when you arrive." Clara was already standing. "We're coming." 10 minutes. She ended the call and met Sebastian's eyes. All the old lightning returned to his posture, the kind that moves a man from stillness to motion in a breath. He didn't ask what she needed. He offered. "Car or my wheel?" He asked. "Your wheel," she said. He grabbed keys, a hoodie, her bag, his wallet. She slipped into flats, phone in back pocket. In the elevator, he reached for her hand without looking and found it. The car waited in the private bay. He took corners with care, not speed. A man who understood that control is sometimes the difference between getting there and not. At a red light, he said, "We'll listen first." "Yes," she said, "if they need consent." "You'll read," she answered, finding a smile she didn't feel. "I'll sign." "Deal," he said, voice quiet as the light turned green. The hospital had its own weather. Hummed air, soft beeps, shoes that never quite echoed. Clara knew the route by heart. She didn't see the new posters or the painted mural on the far wall. She saw a nurse she recognized, a volunteer wiping down a wheel, a coffee cup near the nurse's station with someone's name scrawled in marker. She saw the door to Eli's room open. Eli's eyes lifted when she stepped in. They were glassy, but present. His breathing was fast, shoulders working. A respiratory therapist adjusted the mask. Another nurse checked the monitor. The attending, Dr. Malik, looked up from the chart. "Clara," he said, voice steady. "Good. You're here." "What's happening?" she asked, moving to Eli's side, hand on his forearm where the skin was warm and damp. "A pulmonary infection we've been watching tipped," Dr. Malik said. "He's laboring. We've increased oxygen support and started a new antibiotic. We may need to move to non-invasive ventilation. If he doesn't settle." Eli's fingers twitched in hers. She leaned close. "Hey, Star," she whispered. "I'm here." He nodded, a small, stubborn motion that said he heard her. Sebastian stood a step back, out of the way, eyes tracking every hand that touched a dial. He didn't speak. He didn't try to manage the room. He existed as ballast. Dr. Malik ran through numbers, options, thresholds. "If he doesn't respond in the next hour, we'll talk about the next step. For now, we watch, we support." "Do it," Clara said. "Whatever he needs." The next 40 minutes stretched thin. Clara counted breaths without meaning to. 5 in, 7 out, the kind of math that ties you to the present so you don't float. She wiped Eli's forehead with a cool cloth. She told him the smallest stories, the volunteer with the tiny dog who had visited the waiting room, the way the sunrise looked. From the penthouse when the river decided to sparkle, the cinnamon roll she'd promised to split 3 ways once he was home, his mouth curved beneath the mask, quick and brave. Sebastian left once to fetch water and returned with it open, straw bent toward her without ceremony. He stood where she could see him, if she lifted her eyes, exactly in her line of sight without crowding Eli's. When the monitor's tone edged higher, Sebastian's hands slid into his pockets, knuckles whitening. He looked at the machine. Like a rival, he refused to dignify with a direct stare. Clara sensed it, the old impulse to command, to fix. He swallowed it and stayed. The most difficult thing for a man like him to do. Dr. Malik stepped back in. "Numbers are holding," he said, a shade of relief in his voice. "Not rising yet, but not worsening." Clara exhaled a breath. She didn't know she'd been saving. She kissed Eli's temple. "Hear that? You're holding." "That's my guy." Eli's eyes flicked to Sebastian. A question there, always half a joke, even on days when jokes were in short supply. "Sebastian, read it." "I'm not telling her about the time you beat me at that ridiculous racing game," he said dryly. "That secret is safe." Eli's shoulders bounced once. A laugh. Small, real. Dr. Malik squeezed Clara's shoulder. "We'll keep adjusting. If he tires, we escalate. You're doing exactly what he needs. Just be here. We're not leaving," she said. The doctor nodded and moved to the next room. Hours compressed. The sky outside, tinted toward late afternoon. The numbers nudged up by a breath, held, drifted down a tick, held again. It wasn't victory. It was endurance. When Clara's hand cramped from holding Eli's, Sebastian gently replaced her, fingers with his, for a handful of minutes, letting her roll her wrist. When her back protested the chair, he pressed a palm to the small of it. The perfect pressure in the perfect place, and removed it before comfort could turn cloying. At some point, a nurse set 2 chairs near the bed, without being asked. Clara sat. Sebastian did not. He stood where his height could keep watch, and where she could lean her head if she needed to, which she did. Exactly once. "In the quiet," he whispered. "You were right." She didn't ask. "Which part?" He told her. "Trust isn't a favor," he said. "It's proof." She closed her eyes for a beat. "Thank you." His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Another buzz. He turned it off. Near dusk, Eli's breathing eased half a step. The therapist adjusted the settings, logged the change, gave Clara a smile that said, "Keep going." Clara felt something unlock in her chest. The smallest release, but enough. She looked up at Sebastian. He was watching Eli, jaw finally unclenched. When his eyes shifted to her, they were soft and fierce at once. "I'm not letting the world near you without your say," he murmured. "Barely sound. But I'm also not turning you into a schedule. I hear you. Hold me to it." "I will," she said. The monitor beeped, steady and stubborn. The night staff changed over. Somewhere down the hall, a cart squeaked, and a volunteer hummed under her breath. Life kept its rhythm. Clara kept her hand on Eli's, and her shoulder against Sebastian's side. No cameras, no press, no audience. Just the 3 of them, and the simple fact of staying. Near midnight, the ward lights dimmed to their night setting. Machines kept their measured chorus. A volunteer rolled past, with a cart stacked with blankets. Clara stepped into the family room down the hall, and closed the door quietly behind her. She made it to the end of the worn sofa before the day finally caught up, fear hitting like a wave that didn't ask permission. She pressed a fist to her mouth, bent forward, and let the tears come. Silent at first, then not. It wasn't only the numbers on the monitor, or the doctor's careful tone. It was the long run of months behind them. The times, she told Eli, a joke to keep his courage steady while hers frayed at the edges. The door opened. Sebastian didn't announce himself. He crossed the room, knelt in front of her, and offered a clean handkerchief as if it were a promise. "Hey," he murmured. "I'm here." She tried to wipe her face, failed, laughed once at herself, then cried harder. He didn't rush to fix the tears or lift her to her feet. He simply gathered her gently, drawing her onto his lap on the old sofa like it was the most natural place in the world. One arm circled her waist, the other cradled the back of her head. He pressed a slow kiss to her hair and matched his breathing to hers until her ribs stopped shaking. "I can't be strong every hour," she whispered against his collar. "You don't have to be," he said. You only have to be here. She pulled back enough to see his face. What if we're cheering for a hill that doesn't ever level out? Then we put a chair on it, he answered, and rest. Between pushes, no speeches, no pretty lines. Just a man careful with his words, offering steadiness instead of solutions. When the tears thinned, he unwrapped a blanket from the volunteer's cart and tucked it around her shoulders, smoothing the edge like he was straightening a page. He didn't let go of her hand. He didn't intend to. When Clara could stand again, Sebastian stood with her. I'm going to bring more help to the table, he said. Not to replace Dr. Malik. He's good. To add tools. She nodded, wary of anything that sounded like power stomping through a ward. With him, Sebastian. Not around him. With him, he promised. He stepped into the corridor, phone already in his hand, voice low and controlled. Clara watched from the doorway as he switched from comfort to command without losing respect in the middle. He called their foundation's medical liaison first, asked for a pediatric pulmonologist who specialized in complex cases, and an infectious disease consultant who could advise on resistant strains. He asked for availability tonight, not tomorrow, and said the word collaborate 3 times. Dr. Malik joined them, sleeves pushed to his elbows, eyes alert. Sebastian met him eye to eye. Doctor, we'd like to supplement your plan with additional consults at our expense. You drive. They advise. Dr. Malik nodded once. Send me their names. If they help us move faster, I'll use them. Within an hour, 2 specialists arrived. Dr. Hahn from pulmonary, Dr. Patel from infectious disease. They reviewed labs, stood shoulder to shoulder with Dr. Malik, and adjusted the plan by inches. Targeted cultures, a tweak to the antibiotic, chest therapy paced to avoid fatigue, a nutrition consult to support recovery. Nothing flashy, everything focused. Sebastian didn't crowd the circle. He stayed close enough to answer billing questions with a single sentence, invoice the foundation. He also asked for small things that matter, an extra recliner so Clara could nap without wrenching her, back, meal vouchers for the family area, a new mask model that wouldn't rub raw at the cheekbone. The head nurse made a note. We can do that, she said, giving him a look that contained gratitude and boundaries. He received both. By 2 in the morning, what could be done had been done. The room felt less like a cliff and more like a tough road with markers. Clara stood beside the bed, fingers laced with Eli's, and watched Sebastian sign a single form authorizing coverage for home care. Once the discharge clock restarted, he didn't blink at the number. He didn't make a show of not blinking. He just signed and handed the pen back. Later, when the hallway settled and the specialists left notes for the morning team, Clara drifted to the doorway and leaned against the frame. Inside the room, Sebastian sat in the visitor's chair with his jacket folded over the back, sleeves pushed up, tie gone. He had a children's sports magazine open, Eli's dog-eared, and was reading the captions. Under his breath, the way you read to someone who's halfway between waking and sleep. He glanced up when he felt her there, whatever he'd been about to say. Are you hungry? Do you want coffee? Do you need to lie down? He let it go. He just held her gaze for a long second, the kind that says, I will be here as long as it takes. She looked past him to the small pile of evidence on the cabinet, 2 meal vouchers he'd forgotten to use because she'd been too upset to eat. His cufflinks, in his pocket, because metal clicks are loud at night, a folded schedule he'd made of questions to ask at rounds, so she wouldn't have to remember them all. None of it asked for thanks. All of it added up. She crossed the room and touched his shoulder. You brought the best without making it a parade, she said, voice low. They're good, he answered. So is Malik. You didn't try to run the ward. I've learned things, he said, a hint of wryness under the fatigue. Mostly from you. She searched his face, tired, focused, tender in that quiet way that never begged for credit. Something eased in her, not because he'd spent money or made calls, but because every move he'd made tonight put care above control. Thank you, she said. He shook his head. There's nothing to thank me for. There is, she said softly. I'll find the words later. He reached for her hand, pressed a kiss to her knuckles, then let their fingers rest together on the arm of the chair. She watched Eli's chest rise and fall, steadier than earlier, and felt the shape of a new certainty form. This wasn't performance, and it wasn't strategy. It was love, spoken fluently without a single claim. She didn't say it out loud. Not yet. She just stayed there, one hand on her brother's blanket, the other in Sebastian's, and let the night carry them forward, inch by honest inch. Morning at the hospital moved in small circles. Nurses switching shifts, the hum of carts, soft talk at the desk. Clara dug for quarters by the vending machine and felt her phone buzz again and again. Ren, don't check the blogs. Call me first. I mean it. Too late. A link sat at the top of her screen. One tap. A blown-up PDF with their names. Marriage agreement. Red circles around lines a stranger thought would sting. 12 months. No romance. Public events required. Photos crowded the bottom. Courthouse steps in the rain, the gala, a hug with an old friend turned into a headline. Her first thought wasn't shame. It was a slow, steady dread for Eli. Cameras might come. Reporters might push past the families who were already carrying too much. Sebastian rounded the corner with 2 coffees. He saw her face, saw the phone, and didn't waste a second on denial. Show me, he said. She handed it over. His jaw set. He didn't swear. He looked up. We keep them away from this floor, Clara said. No noise near the ward. We will, he promised. I'll move everything to the office. You stay with Eli? They took over a tiny family room. His assistant joined by phone. Legal joined. PR joined. The board wanted him at headquarters by 11. Outside the main entrance, microphones were already lined up like a row of silver flowers turned toward the door. Clara sat on the edge of the couch, the phone cold in her palm. I hate that our private choice is a prop for clicks, she said. So do I, he answered. He knelt, pressed a cup into her hands, and looked right at her. I'm sorry I ever put our names on paper like that. I thought I was shielding us. I was wrong. She believed him. She also knew there was no undo button. There was only the next good move. What do we say? She asked. The truth, he said. All of it. That belongs to me. He brushed a thumb over her knuckles, stood, and started making calls with a voice that stayed low and calm, even when the world outside was anything but. The boardroom looked like it always did. Long table, cool light, no soft edges. The lobby downstairs was crowded. Upstairs, it was very quiet. The chair didn't waste time. This hit the market like a rock, she said. Partners want answers. The simplest fix, you step back from your wife in public until the noise dies down. Consider it a short, clear message. A director added, we can frame it as space for reflection. Show the street you're focused on the job. Sebastian listened with his hands flat on the table. He didn't argue point by point. He waited, like a man letting a wave reach shore so he could see what it really was. No, he said finally, without heat. I won't act like she's a mistake. I'm trying to hide. Another director leaned forward. You married for PR. That's how this reads. I married to solve a problem I should never have tried to solve with a contract, he said. That's on me. If I need to apologize, I will. If I need to step down after, I'll step down. What I won't do is turn my marriage into a performance to save face. A few glances traded down the table. Someone cleared a throat. The chair studied him for a long second. You're going to speak, she said. Yes. On what terms? My own, he said, then softened it. I'll listen to counsel. I'll keep numbers and clauses out of it. I will not pretend my wife is a PR risk. The chair's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. You always were stubborn. When it counted, it counts now, he said. She sighed. Fine. If you're set on this, be plain. Markets can handle a plain sentence better than a polished one. That's the plan, he said. He stood. No raised voice. No slam of a door. Just a man choosing the hill he was willing to stand on, whatever it cost him. Back in the car, he tried writing on a legal pad because screens felt like stage lights. He wrote 2 lines, crossed them out, rubbed a hand over his face. Too stiff, Clara asked, sliding in beside him in the back seat for the drive from the hospital to the office. She wouldn't go upstairs with him. They'd agreed on that. But she could sit with him now. Too careful, he said. I'm dodging to make it sound smart. It needs to sound true. She took the pen and wrote, I made a contract. That was wrong. I fell in love. That is true. She pushed the pad back to him. Start there. No speeches. He huffed, a quiet breath that was almost a laugh. Stay with Eli. I will, she said. Call me before you walk on. Hear my voice first. I'll call, he said. If I don't, show up and drag me off the stage. Deal. PR texted a statement that sounded like it had been boiled for safety. He pulled 3 good sentences from it and left the rest. Legal called to remind him not to mention money. He agreed. Security mapped a side entrance to avoid the crush. Before he stepped out of the car at the office, he called the ward. Dr. Malik said Eli was holding his own. The tight fist in Sebastian's chest loosened a notch. He turned to Clara. I'm going to say the words I should have said months ago. I know, she said. He kissed her forehead, a simple press, then paused in the open door. No more cages, he added, a promise to himself as much as to her. No more cages, she repeated. He shut the door gently and walked into the building, not like a man racing to put out a fire, but like a man who had already decided which truth he would carry in both hands. The atrium had been turned into a small stage, lectern, mics, a wall of glass behind him with the city beyond. Reporters filled the rows. The buzz in the air fell away when he stepped up with no notes. Good afternoon, Sebastian said. You've seen a document with my name on it. I'm not going to pretend it's fake. I wrote it. I asked someone I barely knew to marry me, because I was scared of losing parts of my life and my work. I thought a contract would keep everything neat. That was wrong. The room went very still. He didn't fill the silence with filler. I'm sorry, he said. To our team, to our partners, to anyone who looked at that paper and felt like marriage got turned into a business trick. I'm sorry, most of all, to the woman who trusted me when I didn't deserve it. He took a breath that sounded like it reached his ribs. His voice softened. What that paper can't show you is the real part. It can't show you nights at the hospital. It can't show you a young man fighting to breathe and a sister who refuses to leave his side. It can't show you what happens to a man who swore he'd never need anyone, and then found he couldn't go a day without hearing one person's laugh. He looked straight into the cameras, as if he was speaking to one person on the other side of them. We are not separating to make anyone feel better about a headline, he said. We are ending the contract, publicly, fully, and we are staying married. This woman is my life. The words weren't clever. They didn't try to be. They landed anyway. A reporter called. Are you stepping down? If the board believes I can't lead after this, I'll accept that, he said. Hold me to the numbers. Hold me to results. But don't ask me to pretend my marriage is a mistake. I won't do it. Another voice. Was it love from the start? No, he said, honest as a cut. It grew. It surprised me. It changed me. That's the truth I'm giving you today. He thanked everyone, stepped away, and left by the side door. The car door shut. His hands trembled once, like a body letting go after a long hold. He pulled out his phone and called the only person he wanted to hear. Clara, picked up on the first ring. "You okay?" she asked. "I am now," he said. Back on the ward, the clip ran on the TV above the nurse's station. A few staff watched for a minute, nodded, and went back to charts. In Eli's room, Clara rested her hand on her brother's blanket, and Eli let Sebastian's voice in her ear smooth the sharp edges of the day. No fancy phrases, no polished spin. Just two people telling the truth and choosing each other where everyone could see. By the time the evening nurse finished her rounds, Eli was steady enough for Clara to leave for a few hours. "Sleep in your own bed," the nurse urged, tucking a blanket at the foot of the cot. "He'll rest better if you do." Sebastian drove them home with the radio low, and the city sliding past like a quiet stream of light. No press at the private entrance. No questions, just the hush that follows a hard day. In the elevator, Clara leaned against the mirrored wall, shoes dangling from her fingers. He stood close enough for his sleeve to brush her shoulder, careful not to crowd. Inside the penthouse, she set the shoes by the door and rubbed the crease where the mask had sat on her cheek. The place no longer felt like a museum. Her plants softened the glass. A stack of cookbooks lived near the kitchen island. A throw she'd found at a thrift shop draped the sofa. Home had learned her shape. "I watched the clip," she said, voice low. At the nurse's station, he slid his keys to the bowl. "Do you forgive me? For not hiding?" She turned to face him. "For not hiding, yes. For that old paper, I forgave you hours ago, somewhere between the third consult and the second meal voucher you forgot to use." His laugh came out quiet and a little shaky. He reached for her hands, palms warm against hers. "You're the only thing that has felt true all day. Come here then," she said. They didn't rush. He boiled water, made her ginger tea the way she liked it, honey at the bottom so the first sip tasted sweet. She watched him move around his own kitchen like a man who finally knew what he wanted to build inside these walls. When she finished the mug, he took it and set it in the sink, drying his hands on a towel while keeping his eyes on her. His expression had changed since the press conference. Less steel, more light. "Clara," he said, voice roughened by relief. "Stay with me tonight." "I was going to anyway," she whispered, stepping into his open arms. They swayed in the kitchen first. No music, just the hum of the fridge and the soft slide of skin against cotton. He pressed his face to her hair, breathing her in like something he'd been missing for months. His hands found her waist, tentative at first, then sure the moment she curled closer. Each movement felt like a sentence they hadn't had time to say. He paused, searching her face. "Tell me if you need to stop." She smiled up at him. "I'll tell you if I need to breathe." He kissed her forehead, her cheek, the corner of her mouth. She rose on her toes and met him there, lips warm, unhurried. Nothing about it asked for proof. Everything about it offered one. He tasted salt, where tears had dried, and something in him eased. They left the lights low and walked the hallway together, shoulders touching, hands linked. In the bedroom, he switched on the small lamp he'd put on her side weeks ago, the one with the soft shade that made the room glow like a kept promise. He shrugged off his jacket and tossed it toward a chair. Missed by a mile, and they both laughed, the sound breaking the last of the day's tightness. "Stay," he said again, as if the word itself soothed him. "I'm not going anywhere," she answered, and meant it. He cupped her jaw, thumbs skimming the curve just beneath her ears, and kissed her like he was learning the quiet language of home. She answered with her hands at the back of his neck, drawing him down. Steady and sure. Clothes loosened in the kind of way that happens when nothing is hurried. His mouth traced a line along her temple, her shoulder, the place where gratitude meets tenderness. She touched his chest, felt the strong, steady beat under her palm, and a breath left her like a prayer answered. "Look at me," he murmured. "I am," she said, eyes open, present. The rest unfolded without noise. A slow deepening, a murmured name, a soft laugh when the sheet tangled, the sweet ache that comes with trust. When she whispered that she needed a second, he stilled at once, forehead resting against hers, breath warm, waiting for her nod. When it came, he moved with her again, patient, careful, wholly there. The world narrowed to the span of the mattress and the shape their bodies made in the half-light. They met in a place words can't quite map, where care turns into closeness, and closeness turns into peace. Later, when quiet settled over them, he gathered her closer, nose in her hair, arms around her like a harper. His voice brushed her ear, low and certain. "I will never let you go. Not now. Not ever." Her answer was a soft sound that felt like yes. They lay facing each other, pillow to pillow, the lamp still on. He stroked a curl from her forehead and tucked it behind her ear, fingers lingering. She traced the strong line of his shoulder with the back of her knuckles, learning him again the way you learn a song by heart. "You were brave today," she said, "not because of the cameras. Because you told the truth without dressing it up." He huffed a small breath. "I wanted to sound wise. It came out simple. That's why it worked." He studied her face, the tiny crease near her brow from hours of worry, the faint imprint the mask had left on her cheek. "You're tired." "I'm happy tired," she said, "which is a different species." He laughed, then sobered. "There's more I want to do right. Paper needs to follow our mouths. I want to file whatever we need to file, to make sure no one can use that old document against you ever again. We'll renew vows, too. Not in a ballroom. Somewhere that feels like us. A park bench would do," she said. "A kitchen, a sidewalk, a hospital chapel. Anywhere you look at me like you did today, I can manage that." He kissed her nose, then her mouth, a quick seal on a promise. She tucked closer, leg tangled with his, hand pressed to his chest. "Tomorrow, we go back to the ward," she murmured. "We sit, we listen, we keep showing up. The rest will sort." "It will," he said. "We will." A quiet settled. That wasn't empty. He reached for the lamp, paused, and looked at her again, a tiny smile tugging at his mouth. "Clara." "Thank you for teaching me the difference between holding and holding on." She smiled back, eyes heavy. "Thank you for learning." He switched off the light. In the soft dark, the city hummed beyond the glass, and the two of them lay wrapped in a warmth that had nothing to do with blankets. Somewhere on the nightstand, his cufflinks clicked softly against each other as the building breathed. In the bed, two people did the same, steady, together, until sleep pulled them under, gentle as a tide. Morning at the hospital had taught Clara to read bodies the way other people read weather. She noticed patterns, Eli's color when he'd slept well, the steadiness of his voice. After the respiratory therapist finished a session, weeks after the press conference, with Eli improving and rehabilitation dates finally penciled into the calendar, Clara started tracking a new pattern, her own. Tea tasted too sweet. The smell of coffee in the clinic break room made her step back. She missed a date on the wall calendar, and then another. She kept telling herself it was stress, or long days, or the way adrenaline drops after a stretch of hard news. But when her favorite meal turned into a sudden nope, and her chest felt tender from even a tight hug, the facts lined up with a quiet click. She bought a test on the way home from a ward meeting, tucked the small box under a bag of oranges, as if the fruit could camouflage her life. In the penthouse bathroom, the soft blue light over the mirror made her look calm, even when she wasn't. She read the instructions twice, like it was a grant application. Set a timer, and sat on the edge of the tub, counting the longest 3 minutes of her life. The second line appeared so fast, it felt like an answer that had been waiting for her to ask the right question. Clara stared, then laughed once. A sound caught between joy and disbelief. She pressed the heel of her hand to her open mouth. She thought of all the nights she had prayed for enough. Enough courage, enough money for Eli's meds, enough strength to keep saying yes to hard days. The idea that her body had answered with more than she dared to hope made her knees feel warm and weak. She didn't tell Sebastian right away, not because she didn't trust him, but because she wanted one night to walk around the apartment and imagine it. A crib near the window, tiny socks in a drawer, someone tugging at the leg of her jeans while she stirred a pot. She pulled a blanket over her shoulders and sat on the floor beside the bedroom window, watching the river lights blink. When Sebastian found her there later, he slid down beside her, wrapped his arm around her, and didn't ask a single question. She rested her head on his shoulder and held the news like a candle cupped in both hands. They booked the earliest appointment the next day with Dr. Rivera, a calm, clear-eyed obstetrician recommended by the hospital's head nurse. The waiting room carried the hush of shared hope. Magazines no one read. A toddler, humming to himself. A bulletin board with birth classes pinned in tidy rows. Sebastian filled out the forms like he was signing a treaty, printing his name carefully beside. Partner, emergency contact, and underlining the word like it mattered, because it did. In the exam room, the paper on the table rustled when Clara climbed up. She laced her fingers over her stomach and looked at the screen, blank for now. Sebastian stood at her shoulder within easy reach, not crowding, face unreadable except for the way his eyes kept going soft and then fierce, soft and then fierce, like waves smoothing a piece of glass. Dr. Rivera was the kind of person who spoke like a friend without losing her edge. She reviewed history, allergies, the long months of stress, the better weeks behind them. "We'll check dates with a scan," she said, wheeling the small machine closer. "You'll hear a sound most people never forget." Clara's throat tightened. "I'm not sure I'm ready," she admitted, laughing at herself. "No one is," Dr. Rivera said gently. "That's half the wonder." The gel was cold. The wand pressed lightly. The room shrank to the screen, and the rising steady swell of a sound, like shoes on a soft-running track. Then a second rhythm answered from across the image, a syncopation that didn't match the first. Dr. Rivera smiled, adjusting the angle. "Well, that's a surprise." And a half. Clara blinked. "What do you mean?" "Twins," the doctor said, warm with it. She pointed to 2 sacs, 2 flashes, 2 heartbeats. Sebastian's hand found Clara's without looking. She gripped his as the second rhythm filled the room, weaving under the first. A duet so simple and wild, she had to close her eyes. Tears slid out before she could stop them. She let them. When she opened her eyes again, she found him already looking at her, stunned, wide open, like the world had just changed shape, and he was grateful to witness it. Clara whispered, almost afraid to say it too loud in case it flew away. "Two," he echoed, voice rough. He kissed her temple and breathed in like the air finally made sense. Dr. Rivera printed the first photos and placed them in Clara's hand as if passing over a map. "We'll talk nutrition, rest, reasonable precautions," she said. "But for today, take this in. Go home and call whoever you love. Eat something you like. Come back in 2 weeks, and we'll start counting milestones together." They didn't make it home right away. Sebastian drove to a small park along the river, where a food truck sold grilled cheese and tomato soup, no matter the season. They sat on a bench, with 2 paper cups warming their palms and the city steady around them. Clara unfolded the ultrasound printouts, like sacred paper. "Look," she said, pointing with a fingertip, "right here." That little flicker. He leaned in, shoulder pressed to hers. "That's a heartbeat," he said, almost disbelieving. "And that's another heartbeat." She nodded, a wet laugh escaping. "Apparently, we do nothing by halves." He turned to face her fully, his knees brushing hers, expression open in, a way she'd only seen a handful of times. Once in a hospital family room, once in their kitchen, when he said he would never let her go. Once on a dance floor in a quiet penthouse when music had made courage easy. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting that we could hold this." "It's not just trust," she said, the corner of her mouth lifting. "It's biology. Biology. And a stubborn streak," he agreed. He looked down at the photos again, and then back up, as if needing to compare the proof in his hand with the person in front of him. "I don't know anything about twins." "Me neither," she admitted. "I know. I'm suddenly starving." He stood, dropped the empty soup cups into a bin, and came back with 2 more, one for her, one for himself, and a bag of salty chips he knew she liked. They sat and ate with the focus of people who had just received an assignment they wanted to ace. Between bites, he pulled out his phone and typed a list that wasn't really a list so much as a promise. Appointments, questions for Dr. Rivera, bedtime, routine ideas for a newborn X2, nursery safety checks, leave plans, a rotation chart for night shifts that assumed equity instead of help. Clara watched the bullet points appear. "You know this is not a project plan," she teased. "I know," he said, smiling without apology. "It's how I keep from floating off the ground." She folded the pictures and tucked them into his breast pocket. "Carry them for me," she said. He covered the pocket with his palm. Always. That afternoon, the penthouse learned a new quiet, the kind filled with lists spoken out loud, and laughter that came quickly and often. Sebastian moved like a man who had found the exact pace he wanted to keep. He called Dr. Rivera's office to book the next visit, and set the calendar to chime on his phone and his watch. He asked his KO for an updated coverage plan that would let him leave at odd hours without drama. He told legal to draft formal leave language for all senior staff who became parents, not just him, and to publish it, not bury it in a handbook. Clara stood in the doorway of the study listening to him say, "Take it, out of my budget, not hers," and felt something in her chest widen. She wandered to the room that had been an extra office and stood there, imagining soft light and 2 cribs and a chair that rocked quietly. Sebastian joined her a minute later, ultrasound prints still in his pocket like a badge. "We'll keep it simple," she said. "No theme. Just safe and soft." "Safe and soft," he repeated. As if the words were a kind of guide rope, he reached for her hand, lacing their fingers. "I'm going to say something that sounds like a speech. And I mean every word," he warned, almost shy. "Go ahead. I will be at every appointment," he said. "If a board meeting conflicts, the board meeting moves. If a partner is offended, they can be offended. If a reporter wants a quote, they can quote this. My family comes first. I'll change diapers. I'll do the night shift. I'll learn the songs that put babies to sleep. I'll do whatever this requires, for as long as it takes." She blinked too fast and laughed at herself. "You practicing for a podium again?" "No," he said, pulling her closer. "I'm practicing for life." He kissed her, quick and sure, and rested his forehead against hers. "If I ever start to overprotect again, say the word. Pull me back. Make me better." "I will," she said. "And if I ever try to carry too much alone, you do the same. Deal?" He looked around the empty room. "We need a chair," he added, practical breaking through his awe. "A comfortable one, with a side table for water and a place to put a book down without losing your page, and a lamp that doesn't glare," she said. "And a rug that's softer than it looks," he returned. They went back and forth like that, small items, ordinary and perfect, until the room was full of the sound of 2 people building a place to land. They told Eli first. The rehab gym had a view of the skyline, and a poster on the wall that said 1 more step. He was working with bands when they walked in, cheeks flushed with effort, a nurse timing his breathing. Clara waited for the interval, then held up the ultrasound printout. "What's that?" he asked, pushing up on his elbows. "Your future title," she said. "Assistant coach." He took the picture with hands that still shook sometimes. It took him a second. Then his eyes went wide. 2, he rasped, voice climbing. 2, Sebastian said, grinning like a boy who'd been handed a triple scoop cone. "We're going to need your advice on video games that are somehow quiet." Eli laughed until he coughed, then laughed again. The nurse wiped his eyes and muttered that no one was allowed to make her cry on the clock. When his breathing settled, Eli held the picture like it might disappear and whispered, "You're going to be the best mom." Clara kissed his forehead. "I learned from you." They called Wren next. Her squeal echoed through the speaker, loud enough to make a therapist jump. "Twins?" she yelled. "I'm buying double of everything and showing up with casseroles until you beg me to stop." By the time the sun slid low, the day had collected its own circle of joy. Texts from the clinic volunteers. A quick call from Dr. Rivera to say the labs looked good. A message from the board chair that read simply, "Congratulations. Take what you need. We've got the rest." Back home, Sebastian cooked pasta with cherry tomatoes and basil, the way she liked it when her stomach was steady. They stood at the counter, eating from bowls, bumping shoulders, talking names without settling on any. He paused at the sink, turned, and caught her around the waist, lifting her half an inch, as if he couldn't not. "Twins," he said again, wonder never leaving his face. "Two heartbeats." "Two heartbeats," she echoed, laying his hand against her stomach. The gesture felt like naming a star. Not for the sky, but for the home beneath it. He kissed her palm, and then her mouth. Light and sure. "We already built a life from nothing but stubborn hope," he said. "We can do this. We will," she answered. They turned off lights, one by one, and left the door open to the room that would soon hold more than plans. The city moved outside, steady as a metronome. Inside, two people stood in the soft dark, listening with their hands for a rhythm they could not yet hear, but already believed in with everything they had. The first box arrived on a rainy Tuesday, plain cardboard with a shipping label that looked almost shy about what it carried. By Friday, the hallway outside the spare room was a small city of boxes, cribs, a rocker, a stack of cotton, sheets rolled tight as pastries, a carton of outlet covers, drawer locks, two tiny knit hats in soft grey. A paint deck lay open on the floor with 3 swatches torn free, warm white, sea glass, and a gentle clay that looked like it had learned patience. Sea glass, Clara decided, holding the strip against the wall while the afternoon light moved across it. It lifts the room without shouting. "Sea glass it is," Sebastian said, already rolling the tarp out, blue tape around his wrist like a bracelet. He read the paint can, the way he read contracts, lips moving slightly. At the small print, low VOC, quick dry, soap and water cleanup. He cut the line along the ceiling with a steady hand. Clara followed with the roller, the two of them moving around each other in an easy dance that had no music and still found a rhythm. Wren showed up with sandwiches and declared herself foreman. "Hydrate," she ordered, handing Clara a bottle of water. "Sit when you need to sit. I will glare at anyone who forgets." "I would like to stay on her good side," Sebastian murmured, taking his own water obediently. By evening, the walls had learned their new color. Sebastian pulled the tape with a satisfying hiss, and they stood back shoulder to shoulder, hands streaked with pale green. The room felt calmer, somehow wider, like it had taken a deep breath with them. Next came the furniture. The crib instructions were a small book full of drawings of cheerful stick figures doing improbable feats with Allen keys. "It says 2 people," Sebastian announced, which, as we all know, means 4 hands and 6 attempts. 6 attempts later, the first crib stood solid, a clean line of wood with slats, close enough to pass every safety guide he'd read at 2 in the morning. He shook it once, not out of doubt, but out of pride. "Rock steady," he said softly. Clara smoothed a hand over the rail. "They'll sleep here," she whispered, not to him so much as to the future. The second crib went faster. Wren fastened the dresser to the wall with a bracket, tugging on it like a skeptic testing a story. "No topple," she declared. She strung a simple mobile over each crib, paper moons and tiny stars that turned in the slightest breeze. "No plastic owls with scary eyes," she said. "You can thank me later." They argued cheerfully about rugs. Clara liked one with a subtle weave. Sebastian worried about tripping at 2 in the morning. They compromised on a low, plush pad that wouldn't fold underfoot and felt like a field under bare toes. He installed a small bookshelf at knee height, then knelt to line up board books with titles that made them both smile. Good night. Good night. Construction site beside blueberries for Sal, beside a slim volume of lullabies from his mother's old collection. Eli requested a video call from rehab to consult on decor. Stars, he said, pointing at the mobile through the screen. Make the walls match. Constellations. Those glow stickers that don't look babyish. I'm impressed, Sebastian told him, demonstrating taste and ambition. Eli preened. I have range, he said, then coughed, then grinned again. Do you need me to name them? The kids, not the constellations. We're keeping names under wraps, Clara said, though her face did a traitor's softening when she said it, which told her brother enough. After dinner, they tested the rocker. It creaked once in protest before Sebastian tightened a single screw and made it as silent as a promise. He sat and pulled Clara onto his lap like he had during earlier storms, one hand braced at the small of her back, the other spread over the gentle curve of her stomach. The twins seemed to have adopted an evening schedule of flutters, a soft tap-tap like rain on a window. When they moved, he felt it under his palm and froze, eyes going wide each time, as if it were the first time all over again. They're learning your voice, Clara said, not as poetry, but as fact. Then I'll give them good sounds, he answered. He leaned forward and read the first page of a book about trucks in the tone of a bedtime story, and a quarterly call all at once, slow and certain. Once there was a big busy world. It learned to rest. The monitor went on the corner shelf. The camera blinked once in a way that felt like a wink, then stayed quiet. He set up a white noise machine and scrolled through the choices. Wind, water, a distant train. Ocean, Clara said. They can dream of growing up, brave. They kept the windows bare except for soft linen shades that filtered harsh light. A small laundry basket tucked beside the dresser waited for the first sleepsuits. A basket near the rocker held burp cloths, folded with the precision of a man who had begun to take deep satisfaction in small, useful piles. At some point, the room stopped being a project and became a place. It wasn't grand. It was kind. Sebastian stood in the doorway and let the sight find him, the cribs that would soon hold the two newest parts of his heart, the rocker that would learn their weight, the faint swish of those paper moons turning over them. He slipped an arm around Clara's shoulders and drew her into his side, cheek against her hair. What do you see? She asked. Home, he said. Simple as that. They turned off the light and stood for a moment in the soft glow from the hall. The sea glass walls held the last light of the day, as if unwilling to let it leave. In that small hush, Clara said what had been sitting in her chest for hours. We did this together. He pressed a kiss to the crown of her head. We'll do the rest the same way. As they walked away, he went back once and checked each crib rail again, fingers tapping along the screws. Not fear, just care turned into habit. In the kitchen, he set a glass of water by her side of the bed without comment, taped a printed list of emergency numbers inside the pantry door, and tucked a small flashlight into the drawer under the rocker. None of it asked for praise. All of it was love, in the shape of simple things that would matter at 3 in the morning. Before sleep, he slid a hand to her stomach and waited, patient as the sea. A flutter answered. He smiled in the dark. A rare smile no one else would see. Hi, he whispered. We're ready for you. The next week, Sebastian took a pen to his calendar in a way that made his assistant sit back and blink. He didn't just block out dates. He carved out lanes. Start with the non-negotiables, he said. Dr. Rivera's appointments go in first. Every one. Prenatal classes, put them on the board. He opened the company schedule and added a shared note for the executive team. No meeting moves these. Investor forum in Dallas. His assistant asked. Virtual, he said. If they want in person, they can come here, and we'll walk them through. The fund that helps families like the one my wife came from. Or they can watch the quarterly and send questions. Conference keynote declined. Recommend Mai to take it. She's due for a bigger platform. And she's better at telling the story of our supply chain rebuild than I am. He sent a memo to the board that sounded like him. Plain and grounded. I will be present where I'm needed. That includes home. I've trained deputies for years. Now they get to lead. Hold us to results. If our numbers slip because I'm changing diapers, I'll own it. Until then, don't confuse time at a desk with value. He didn't wait for approval. He built the scaffolding first. A weekly 2-hour window labeled Clinic Family. Do not call. A standing daily block at 5 p.m. That said home for dinner. A hard stop on travel after week 28, unless Dr. Rivera said otherwise. He called legal and HR together. Parental leave at senior levels gets formalized today, he said. Not a perk. A policy. 8 weeks full pay for non-birthing parents, 12 for birthing parents. No stigma, no jokes. If anyone uses the word babysitting in a memo to describe a father with his child, I want that training deck rewritten. Effective when HR asked. Retroactive, he said. Backdated to the last 12 months, so we catch people who swallowed their need out of loyalty and fear. He met with Mai and Arjun, his top 2 lieutenants. Over lunch that didn't include any grand speeches. You'll take point on the Frankfurt deal, he told May. Arjun, the domestic expansion sits with you. I'll shadow. I won't hover. You're going to be insufferably cheerful, aren't you? May said, hiding a smile. Only at odd moments, he promised. Mostly at 3 a.m., I hear. At home, his reordering looked like simple acts that added up. He set an alarm on his watch, labeled Snack Check, and brought Clara a small plate every afternoon. Cheese, fruit, crackers, without fanfare. He learned which prenatal vitamins upset her stomach and switched brands. He installed a nightlight in the hallway so trips to the bathroom didn't feel like crossing an airport runway. When she woke from a dream, with her heart racing, he was awake already, hand warm at the small of her back, breath slowing in time with hers. They toured the hospital's birthing suites together. The nurse leading the class had a good dry sense of humor and showed them how to swaddle, using a stuffed bear with a mischievous face. Sebastian's first attempt looked like a holiday tamale. By the second try he had it, snug without squeezing, and he looked absurdly proud of himself. Show off, Clara teased. I'm trying to make a good first impression, he said, resetting the blanket like a magician, revealing the trick slowly. They practiced breathing, not as a ritual, but as a way to make minutes softer. He counted in 8s, in a low voice that had once intimidated boardrooms and now helped a woman he loved feel safe in a room, with a fetal monitor beeping steadily in the background. Not every day went smoothly. There were meetings that ran long and left him tapping the steering wheel. At red lights, calling up to say, 5 minutes, I'm almost home. There was one morning when a partner tried to push a breakfast onto his do not call block. He looked across the table and said, we can do noon or not at all. My wife has an appointment and I won't miss it. The partner, who had 3 kids of his own, sat back and said, noon's fine, as if it had been waiting for someone to say it out loud. There was a scare too. A wave of dizziness hit Clara while she stood in the checkout line of a small market near the hospital. She sat on a crate of oranges until it passed, hand over her stomach, counting quiet counts. Sebastian arrived in 7 minutes flat, hair a little wild, tie loose, breath high in his chest. I'm okay, she told him, embarrassed by the attention from the clerk who had fetched a chair and a bottle of cold water. I know, he said, still scanning her face. He crouched in the aisle between canned tomatoes and bags of flour and rested his forehead against her knee as if the floor of a grocery store were a cathedral. But I'm here. Dr. Rivera was unruffled at the follow-up. Twins keep the body busy, she said. We'll add a little more iron. Eat more protein. Sit when you're lightheaded. Call me if anything feels off. Sebastian wrote it down, every word, not because he couldn't remember, but because writing is a way of promising to act. They kept living. Dinners was simple. Pasta, roasted vegetables, the lemony chicken that didn't turn her stomach. He read aloud from a baby manual at night, stopping to laugh at the sections that treated tiny humans like office equipment and taking seriously the parts about safe sleep and the art of burping. He talked to the twins while he folded laundry in the living room, telling them about the first time he'd ridden a bike without training wheels, and how badly he'd scraped his knees, and how proud he'd been of the scar. In quiet hours, he sat in the rocker with his laptop closed and his hands on her belly, telling stories he had never told anyone because he'd thought no one needed them, how his mother used to cut toast into triangles and call them sailboats, how he had once memorized every bus route in their neighborhood because he liked knowing which way the world was going. "Do you know," Clara said one night, "that you speak softer when you talk to them?" He shrugged, a little sheepish. "I don't want to startle them. They like your voice," she said. "I can tell. They move, as if they're reaching for it." He smiled, a small thing that had become frequent in their rooms. "Good. There's plenty of it to go around." The nursery got its last touch on a Saturday morning when Eli came home for the weekend and insisted on placing the final piece, 2 small frames over the rocker, each holding a simple print, one of a moon, one of a sun. He stood back, with his hands on his hips, like a craftsman, approving his own work. "Balance," he said. "Everyone needs both." That afternoon, Sebastian opened his calendar and sent one more invite to himself. At the same time every evening, 15 minutes, sit in nursery together. It wasn't a task. It was a reminder to keep making room for the thing that mattered most. The first night, they went in, shut the door, and sat without talking. The room held their quiet easily. When the twins kicked, he felt it under his hand and laughed out loud, head tipping back, joy plain as day. He turned to Clara, eyes bright. "I cleared space," he said, half to her, half to himself. "Now we fill it with right things." "Exactly," she said. They sat until the timer chimed on his watch, and then a little longer, because no chime gets the last word in a house where 2 new heartbeats are already teaching the old ones a better pace. The article hit just after sunrise. Clara was at the stove coaxing oatmeal into something comforting while Sebastian sat at the table with a notebook, sketching a list titled Night Routine. 2 babies. His handwriting leaned left when he was focused. Today, every line was straight. Her phone buzzed 3 times in a row. Ren, then the board chair, then a number she didn't know. A headline floated on the lock screen like a dare. Exclusive. Knight's convenient wife. And the secret payout. She opened it, because not opening doesn't stop a rumor from spreading. The story was laid out with red boxes around screenshots, arrows pointing at dates that didn't quite match. It claimed Sebastian had paid off a former employee years ago to bury a personal mistake, and that Clara had been chosen later to soften the look of it all. It called their fund for families Image Laundry. It linked the old contract photo from the courthouse reign to a pattern. She didn't taste the oatmeal anymore. She tasted metal. Sebastian watched her face change, closed his notebook, and reached for her phone without asking. He read fast, then slower. He didn't swear. He placed the phone on the table like a piece of faulty equipment he intended to take apart and fix. "Call Albright," he said. "Call May. Get the audit files. We answer this with facts." Clara leaned on the counter with both hands, breathing evenly. "It's not just facts." He picked this angle to hit me in the stomach. "Our fund. Eli. The people who sit in waiting rooms." Sebastian's jaw worked. "Kincaid," he said, naming the rival out loud, as if naming removed power. "It has his fingerprints. He couldn't win on numbers. He wants sludge." Clara turned off the burner. The oatmeal bubbled once and went quiet. "Then I'm speaking," she said. "Clara, I'm speaking," she repeated, steady. You already made your stand. You told the world you chose us. Now he's using me as the lever. Let me push back. He looked at her for a long moment, the kind that measures a person and finds the right answer. Together, he said finally. Together, she agreed. But I'll take the mic. He nodded once. The same nod she'd seen in the boardroom when he picked a course and didn't move. He started making calls. She texted Ren. Clinic at 2. Not a speech. A conversation. By 8, Legal had pulled the general ledger. By 9, May had a clean summary from an outside firm that had audited every line of charity spend since launch. By 10, Ren had booked the small community room down the block from the hospital, because the hospital had enough to carry without cameras. By noon, the rumor had grown teeth online. By 1, Clara had slipped on a simple black dress that made her feel grounded and pinned her hair back, the way she did when she needed her thoughts neat. The community center smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and crayons. Folding chairs formed uneven rows. A volunteer propped open the door with a stack of outdated phone books. The sign outside read family support, free drop-in, not press conference. And that was the point. Clara stood at the back with a paper cup of water, watching people file in. A nurse from the ward who had once sat with her at 3 in the ward morning. 2 dads from the respiratory therapy unit. A grandmother who reminded everyone to sign the thank you card for the night staff. Mixed among them were bloggers with handheld cameras, a couple of reporters from outlets that tried to be fair, and near the door, a man in an expensive coat tapping his phone, no doubt streaming for someone who wanted a live feed. Sebastian stood at the side, not on the stage, sleeves rolled once, face steady. Albright slipped her a folder, the audit letter, a timeline, a notarized statement from the former employee named in the smear, saying she'd never taken a cent from Night for silence, only severance when a program shut down. The signatures were fresh. Clara didn't take the stage. She stood on the same floor as everyone else and let the room settle. No podium, no line of microphones, just a circle that could grow or shrink, depending on who showed up. Thank you for coming, she began. I recognize many of you. We've shared coffee, long nights, and the kind of stories that are too heavy to carry alone. She held the folder, not as a prop, but as something she intended to hand to anyone who asked. A story is moving around today that says, my husband paid someone to make a problem go away, and that I married him to make the stain look lighter. If that were true, I wouldn't stand here. I wouldn't have started a fund named after my mother that pays bills in full, not pennies on the dollar. I wouldn't spend Tuesdays trying to convince insurance to move faster for families who've already waited too long. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The room leaned in. I won't tell you to trust me because you like me, she continued. I'm asking you to look at receipts. Here is a letter from an independent auditor who doesn't work for us, who looked at every transaction and traced it to a bill paid or a grant given. Here is a statement from the person the blog named. I'm not reading it out loud, she gets her privacy, but she says plainly that she wasn't paid to stay quiet. She left with severance when a project ended. She found another job, and I hope she's thriving. Clara set the folder on a chair where anyone could walk up and take it. If you still have questions, ask them now. I'll answer what belongs to me. What belongs to Sebastian's past that isn't mine to give, he can answer later. What belongs to Eli and to Patience doesn't get dragged into this room. A hand went up. A reporter asked about the old contract, the one they had already torn up. Clara nodded. We made a mistake, she said. We turned something sacred into something tidy on paper. We fixed it. We fixed it in public. You can't blackmail a person with a truth they've already said out loud. A second hand, sharper voice. Do you deny this was all strategy to keep Knight in power? She met the gaze without flinching. Strategy builds spreadsheets. Life doesn't live on those squares. If power were all he cared about, he wouldn't be in this room right now. He'd be upstairs in a suit trying to sell you a fix. We're not selling anything, We're here because community is the only thing that makes any of this survivable. The grandmother at the end of the row clapped once, decisive. The sound cracked. The stiffness. People shifted, eased. Questions turned practical. How to apply for help, what documents families needed, and the room changed, as rooms do when you return them to their purpose. On the sidewalk after, a cluster of cameras waited in a loose half-moon. The man in the expensive coat smiled like someone who'd been promised a show. "Mrs. Knight," he called, angling the phone to catch her profile. "Any comment for Mr. Kincaid? He says he has more." Clara stopped on the top step, the city pressing quietly against the edges of the block. Bus, brakes sighing. A dog dragging its owner toward a tree. A bicycle bell twice and gone. "Tell Mr. Kincaid," she said, "that if he has questions about corporate governance, he can send them to the board chair. If he has stories about me, he can come say them to my face with your camera rolling. If he has pressure to apply, he should stop using women as the handle." The coat flickered. The smile thinned. Sebastian stepped to her side, not in front of her. "Adrian," he said, picking the camera with a perfect little pivot, because of course the rival was watching the stream. "You're good at moving numbers around a screen. I'll give you that. But you're not good at reading a room. This one's not buying what you're selling." A younger blogger pushed forward. "Do you have documentation?" he asked. Eyes on Clara. "You said receipts." "Inside," Clara said, gesturing to the community room. "You can take photos of anything in the folder. Block out names that don't belong to you. Do it right." Wren, who had drifted near the door like a bodyguard who liked to bake, slipped a small stack of printed pages into the blogger's hand. "Here's the audit letter, with the contact for verification," she said. "Here's the timeline of the fund's disbursements with invoice numbers. Here's a statement from the clinic director." She raised her brows at the man in the coat. "You're free to request the same." The coat man took a step back, thumb moving, probably texting a handler to ask for new instructions. The crowd began to shift again, the attention sliding away from the pointed questions to the practical ones. What had changed? At night, since the parental leave memo, how people could support the fund, whether there would be more community Q, and as. Albright's number flashed on Sebastian's phone. He answered, listened, and his shoulders dropped a fraction. He covered the mouthpiece. "The blog just edited the headline," he murmured to Clara. "Softened the claim. Added, alleged. They're posting the auditor's comment. That's not the same as an apology," Clara said. "It's the first inch," he replied. "We'll get the rest." As if on cue, another message came in. The board chair. "We stand by the work and the fund." Statement at 3. Focus on families. He showed it to Clara. She nodded once, grateful and not surprised. People who had sat in conference rooms with him for years were learning new habits too. She took Sebastian's hand, just for a second, a squeeze that said, "We're steady." Then she let go and walked back inside to help fold chairs. Because leaving things better than you found them had become a ritual that kept her sane. By late afternoon, Wren's thread was everywhere. It wasn't snarky. It wasn't clever. It was tidy and calm. Screenshots of the audit firm's letterhead. Photos of checks made to hospitals, pharmacies, and families. A line-by-line note explaining how the fund had decided cases. A link to the application, form, and the wait times, which were measured in days, not weeks. May posted a statement from Knight's internal controls team, signed by 2 people who did not report to Sebastian directly. Arjun followed with a note about the parent leave policy, and who had used it so far, anonymized but clear. The clinic director recorded a short video in the supply closet. Harsh light, no filter, talking about the families who had avoided collections because a bill got paid in full. At 3, the board chair's statement went live. It did not read like it had been scrubbed until no one could recognize it. "We believe in transparency," it said. "We have reviewed the claims. We have reviewed the records. We will continue to let facts not innuendo, drive our decisions. The fund stands. Our support for families stands. An hour later, a small account that usually posted nothing but photos of neighborhood dogs dropped a scanned letter. The signature at the bottom matched the name in the smear piece. The letter was plain. No hush payment. Severance only. I was contacted by a representative of Mr. Kincaid's company and offered a consulting fee to talk to a reporter. I declined. I don't want my name used to hurt anyone. It took 10 minutes for a second scan to appear. The offer email, subject line, consulting opportunity. Sender domain, kincaidejp.com. The internet did what it does when a neat lie meets a messy, solid truth. The story tilted. The red boxes lost their glow. Sebastian found Clara in the nursery, sitting in the rocker with her feet on the rug, one hand on the place where the twins were learning to practice their stretches. He leaned in the doorway and watched her read comments from families they'd helped. Thank you for rent paid. Thank you for insulin refills. Thank you for giving us a Wednesday without dread. He crossed to her, lowered himself to the floor at her knees, and rested his head there. She threaded her fingers through his hair. Slow. The room was quiet, but not empty. You defended us, he said. We defended the work, she answered. And each other. He nodded against her leg. That, too. Near dinner, Albright called again. We've received a message from Kincaid's counsel, he said, voice carrying the dry satisfaction of a man who had been patient and now got to enjoy it. They propose a mutual stand down. No further statements. No suit. Sebastian lifted an eyebrow at Clara. She shook her head once. Tell them no gag, he said into the phone. We won't be muzzled, and we won't muzzle them. We're not trading quiet. We're trading truth. Understood, Albright said. Pleased. For what it's worth, the blog's editor just posted a correction. Not quite an apology, but 2 steps in that direction. After he hung up, Sebastian set 2 bowls on the counter and drizzled olive oil over thick slices of bread to toast under the broiler. He moved around the kitchen with that new ease he'd found, the one that kept glancing at the clock, not out of anxiety, but because he wanted to keep his promises to himself. Clara watched him, heart loosening from the grip it had held all day. Do you regret letting me talk? She asked. He looked up, startled. I regret not asking sooner. She smiled. Not bad, Mr. Knight. He set the bowls down. Simple soup, bread warm, basil torn on top, and lifted his glass. To the day we didn't hide, he said. To the day we didn't flinch, she replied. They ate at the counter, bumping shoulders, sending Wren a photo of the empty bowls like a proof of life. After, they walked to the nursery and stood in the doorway the way they had on the day the paint dried. Sebastian slid a hand along the crib rail and checked a screw, habit and comfort in one motion. A courier knocked, 1 page in a large envelope. Clara opened it. A short note from the woman whose name had been dragged into the day, handwritten. I'm sorry my story was used to touch yours. Thank you for not using mine to hit back. Be well. Be noisy when you have to be. It helps the rest of us breathe. Clara pressed the paper flat on the dresser and smoothed the corner. Noisy when we have to be, she repeated. Sebastian took her hand, placed it over his heart, and let the beat say the rest. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, leverage had lost its grip, and the house felt even more like it belonged to the people who lived in it. The first squeeze felt like a belt tightening from the inside. Clara checked the clock, breathed, waited. 5 minutes later, another. The bag by the door had been ready for weeks. 2 tiny hats, a blanket that smelled like home, the folder with Dr. Rivera's notes. Sebastian woke at her whisper. It's time. He swung his legs to the floor in one smooth motion, calm settling over him like a well-worn coat. He helped her into the hoodie she liked, slid her shoes on, grabbed the bag, and pressed the elevator. button with his thumb held too long to the panel, as if the building would be kinder if it knew. The streets were almost empty. He drove steady, one hand on the wheel, the other wrapped around hers. Between waves, they talked about ordinary things: parking, breakfast later, whether the white noise setting the twins preferred was ocean or rain. When a contraction rolled through, he counted with her, slow and low, at admitting. A nurse clipped a band around Clara's wrist and smiled like she'd been waiting for them specifically. Dr. Rivera's on call. Good timing, she said, guiding them to a room with warm walls and a monitor that blinked the twins' rhythms in gentle peaks. Clara changed, settled, breathed through another crest. Sebastian texted Ren and Eli. "We're here. Steady so far." He silenced his phone, moved the chair to Clara's side, and kissed the spot just below her ear. "I'm not leaving this room," he said. "I know," she answered, fingers lacing with his. Labor took on its own pace. Nurses came and went with quiet skill, checking lines, noting numbers, offering sips of ice water. Dr. Rivera arrived with her sleeves rolled and a voice that made the air feel sturdier. "Baby A is low and ready," she said, scanning. "Baby B is a little higher, but content. We'll meet them both today." Clara nodded, focused. Each surge climbed, peaked, and settled. Sebastian kept time with her. Hand on the small of her back when she stood, shoulder under her palm when she leaned. Words simple and steady. In. 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. He learned when silence helped more than talk, and when a joke would loosen her jaw. Nothing big, just a line about the rocker at home already missing them. As the hours stretched, she chose an epidural. The anesthesiologist explained in clear steps, and relief arrived like a door opening to fresh air. Clara exhaled and let her shoulders drop. Sebastian's own breath loosened in response. He hadn't realized he'd been holding it tight. Monitors ticked on. Baby A's pattern held strong. Baby B's line bounced higher, then settled, as if practicing. Dr. Rivera checked again. "You're there," she said. Eyes kind. "We'll move to delivery soon." Sebastian brushed a curl from Clara's forehead. "You're doing it," he whispered. She nodded, tears pricking without fear. "We're doing it," she corrected, squeezing his fingers once, firm. Bright lights lifted without glare. The room filled, not a crowd, just the right team in the right places. Clara drew a breath, set her focus where Dr. Rivera pointed, and bore down when she heard the word now. Sebastian stayed by her head, forehead touching hers between pushes, his voice a bridge she could cross each time. "Good," Dr. Rivera coached. "Again. That's it." The world narrowed to effort, and the rhythm of voices she trusted. Clara felt the shift, pressure, release, and heard a sound that rearranged every hour that had led to this one. Baby A's cry rang out, strong and sure, a declaration and a greeting. Clara laughed and sobbed all in one breath. "A little girl," Dr. Rivera said, lifting a small, perfect person onto Clara's chest. Warmth spread under Clara's hands. The tiny face screwed up, mouth open, lungs working. The skin-to-skin pores made time stretch like taffy. Sebastian's tears came quiet and unhidden as he kissed Clara's hair, then the crown of his daughter's damp head. "Hi, love," he whispered, voice gone soft. "Welcome home." The team moved with practiced grace for Baby B. There was a breath of waiting that felt too long, followed by a firm reposition from Dr. Rivera and a calm instruction or two. Clara held Sebastian's eyes, and he let her see nothing but steadiness. A beat later, another cry broke free, lower, a little surprised at its own volume but steady. Relief washed the room. "A boy," came the announcement, warm with it. He arrived onto Clara's chest as well, small fist opening and closing against her collarbone. Sebastian laughed, a sound he hadn't known his chest could make. "You made it," he told his son. "We've been saving your seat." The hour after felt like a room the world couldn't enter. The twins dozed, startled, rooted and settled, their bodies fitting the curve of Clara like they had always known the way. Sebastian held each in turn, learning their weight, memorizing the shape of their knuckles and the way their noses wrinkled when they yawned. Names, Dr. Rivera asked, gently. Pen poised. Clara and Sebastian looked at each other. The conversation they'd been circling for weeks, finally landing. Marin, Clara said, fingers stroking their daughter's cheek. Seaborn and Kian, Sebastian added, cradling their son. Grace. The nurse wrote them neatly on 2 tiny cards and clipped them to 2 tiny hats. Sun began to edge through the blinds, painting the machines and the blankets with a soft morning. Ren texted a string of hearts that made the phone buzz across the tray. Eli sent a photo of himself in a rehab chair, holding a sign that read, Uncle Level, unlocked. Sebastian leaned close, his mouth at Clara's temple. You were brave, he said. So were you, she answered. He placed a hand over both small backs and spoke quietly. Words for 4 ears only. I was there for your first sounds, he promised. I'll be there for all the rest. Midnight, dawn, every day between. Clara closed her eyes. Exhausted and full, the room settled. Outside, the city woke. Inside, a family began, not with fireworks, but with a pair of heartbeats that had spent months practicing for this morning and were now ready to lead. Sun slid along the edge of the linen, shades the way it had learned to do in this house, slow and kind. From the nursery came a soft chorus that now counted as an alarm. Marin. High trill. Kian's lower reply. The rustle of feet against cotton. Sebastian reached the door first, bare feet quiet on the hallway runner, hair a little wild from sleep he'd gladly given up. He paused 1 second, not to check on them in a worried way, but to take in the sight that rewired him every time. 2 faces turned toward him like sunflowers. He grinned, scooped Kian first, then kissed Marin's forehead as he lifted her into Clara's arms. The rocker welcomed all 4 of them, the way a good chair learns its people. Bottles, warmed, on the small table. Burp cloths, weighted in their neat stack. The twins had grown into themselves. Bright eyes, strong little legs, the start of teeth that made chewing every sleeve a mission. Good morning, team, he said, voice low and warm. Clara pressed her nose to Marin's soft hair and laughed. She smells like clouds. Accurate science, he replied, and past Kian the teether shaped like a bear. Their routine had become a quiet choreography. Feed, burp, stretch on the floor mat, while music hummed low, 1,000 small words spoken for the joy of saying them. Clara tracked milestones on a simple board beside the dresser. First roll, first laugh. The day Kian found his toes and declared them excellent. Marin loved rhythm. She patted the mat, as if keeping time for all 4 of them. Breakfast for the grown-ups came in stages. Sebastian made oatmeal with cinnamon one-handed, the other arm a cradle that had become second nature. He set a mug of mint tea by Clara without announcing it, as if the house itself had learned her cues. Between spoonfuls, they traded updates like postcards. Eli's rehab milestone, Ren's latest care package, a note from the clinic about the fund's next application cycle. 6 months ago, mornings had felt like a race. Now they were a room they entered together, on purpose. Sebastian checked the clock, only to make sure they weren't late for the walk to the clinic, where Clara had meetings. He had already blocked his calendar. The company could begin without him. The twins would not. Ready? Clara asked, sliding the folded blanket into the bag by the door. Always, he said, and meant it in more ways than one. Clara's office at the community clinic had a door that stayed open unless a family needed privacy. Plants on the window ledge were thriving. A bulletin board held notes from parents whose balance had dropped to 0 after a bill got paid. The fund she ran had outgrown the postcard phase without losing its heart. What started as a promise at a kitchen island now moved with steady structure. Intake team 3 mornings a week. Case reviews each afternoon. Partnerships with 2 pharmacies and a durable equipment supplier who waived markups on items. The insurance letters kept calling optional. She arrived with the twins in their stroller, greeted by name as she always was. Staff and nurses had learned the twins' faces the way people learn a daily sunrise. Wren handled the front desk with her usual blend of calm and keen sense, making coffee, fielding calls, reminding anyone who crowed about miracles that paperwork is often a miracle's first step. Clara rolled into the conference nook where May, on loan 1 day a week from Knight Global, had set up a dashboard that made the invisible visible without turning people into columns. "We funded 42 requests this month," May said, tapping her tablet. Average time from application to payment, 5 days. 2 outliers flagged. 1 incomplete form, 1 waiting on a doctor's note that keeps getting misplaced. "Call the office," Clara said. "I'll go in person, if needed." They reviewed 3 cases together. A single parent juggling 2 jobs whose little boy needed a new airway device, a retired bus driver whose oxygen supplier had changed hands and forgotten him, a teenager who'd aged off a program mid-therapy. Clara read each story aloud, not as drama, but as truth, then matched them with the fund's guidelines and the clinic's capacity. No one made speeches. They made phone calls. They moved money where it mattered. They tracked outcomes so donors saw more than photos. They saw bills stamped paid in full. At noon, Clara stepped into the family room where a support group met every Wednesday. She didn't lead. She listened. A grandmother talked about choosing groceries over gas one week. A nurse who had lost her own mother last year shared a tip